I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week, there is crying in baseball.
There's no crying in baseball! No crying!
Oh, yes, there is.
So on what should be the happiest day of the year, we're in like a massive rain delay. The field is flooded. We got nowhere to go, no games. Everybody's back in the clubhouse. Actually, nobody's in the clubhouse. They've cleared the stadium, and we're waiting for this delay to pass so we can finally get on to the greatest season of all. Of course, we don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah, I've heard possibly May. That would be best case scenario. But at this point, I'm really not sure what's happening, what's going on. And I am really bummed because the Dodgers have Mookie Betts and David Price, and their lineup is stellar, and we're in a rain delay.
Yeah, and I hear that. I see that a lot on social media, on different tweets, different Facebook posts, and all that, where everybody's just like, "Wait, when am I going to see Mookie Betts leading off for the Dodgers?" Or in any team, when am I going to get to see my team take the field and do that? But the Dodgers for sure have, and as do the Angels, have a big reason to be excited about the season, because we've got Anthony Rendon debuting as our third baseman. So there's a lot to look at as far as what are we missing out on right now. How is this going to affect, like you said, you heard middle of May. I've heard about the same. Then I've also heard July.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
And then I did see something that was interesting the other day. Is that guy wrote, I think it was like on CBS Sportsnet, but he had said maybe to start the season, we should have the All-Star game. If it started in, say, June or July, right, start the season with the All-Star game. And obviously it doesn't work out the same as what a normal All-Star game is. But then you go and you pick a couple of players from each team, like, from the Dodgers, he mentioned Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw, because they would be the two biggest names.
Right.
Obviously for the Angels, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, because it's a pitcher and, a hitter. So, that's an interesting option, something to kind of excitement to bring people back in. Especially because if you're in July, how many games are we actually going to see?
True. Yeah, I've seen we cut the season in half, but I don't know. So to 81, but I don't know how that would work. And I guess starting it off with the All-Star game, that would still allow LA to host, because that's something that's been batted around. If they do the All-Star game, or do they just not do the All-Star game and then move it in, I think 2022, LA would host, because Atlanta hosts in 2021.
Right. Obviously, those are things that have to work out. But the bigger issues, I think, provided the players, for fans, we're gonna file into the ballparks the minute that everything opens up. This isn't
right,
like, other times where baseball shot itself in the foot by doing something stupid, or when they canceled the 94 World Series, there was a lot of work that had to be done to get fans back in the park. Here, everybody who misses it's going to be going. They're going to be excited for it. And there's probably going to be people who are fans who aren't really big fans. They're going to be going as well, because they're going to be happy to have something back and try to get some kind of normalcy to their lives. Now, the question is, how does this affect how the players come in? Once they decide, how are they going to ramp back up into it? They're going to need, maybe an abbreviated spring training, a part 2 to spring training, get them out there, get them back warm, and how many of these guys, being at home, because I think most places, the spring training facilities have shut down. I've read a couple of them where they said the only players that are still in Arizona are the ones who actually live in Arizona off season. So
Right.
what do we do, or how does that work? Are they going to start a couple weeks out?
I have heard an abbreviated spring training, about 2 weeks, get everybody loose back in. But I was reading Austin Barnes, catcher for the Dodgers, was talking about doing bullpen sessions because they'd still be able to social distance him as a catcher and then the pitcher.
Right.
But, that's not going to happen at this point. But I know just from, things I've seen, read, that I think most of the players are trying to keep loose because they all want to get back to playing. But yeah, that's interesting. Social distancing between the pitcher and the catcher could possibly happen.
They just have to wear gloves on their throwing hands so they're not transmitting
Right.
from one to the other. You can't touch your face while you're can't wipe away that bead of sweat.
No, and see the catcher, they wouldn't have any problem with that. They'll have a mask on. But the pitcher can't lick his fingers. Yeah, right. Can't do that stuff that they do out there on the mound.
So the other things that I've heard that are concerns, especially for the Angels, since pitchers always seem to come down with bad injury problems. What about injury issues? I've heard 2 or 3 different people say, hey, expect a lot of Tommy John surgeries to pop up. I don't know if that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if more injuries or more pulled muscles, things like that, especially for the pitchers, because that's why they start a little earlier. Yeah, it's
right.
only a week early, but they're out there, they're throwing these sessions, they're building up. The question will be is who's coming back off of this, who's going to be faster to playing shape? Is it going to be the hitters or the position players, the everyday players, or will the pitchers be ready earlier, because of what they did before? Or does that kind of take them from being, this time frame, and obviously till May is one thing. If it pushes to July, that opens up a whole different program.
Yeah, it's huge. Then your starting pitchers you might have guys come back that were in the starting lineup or going to be in the rotation, and they might be out of the rotation because somebody else was in their backyard, throwing balls at the wall. I don't know. That could be interesting to see, especially with the pitchers. I think position players will be okay. I don't know. Hitting, if they've got, if they're able to hit, then. But who's throwing to them? Their family?
Right. Well, they could be like Freddie Freeman from the Braves. His just on Twitter, his son, who's I don't know how old his son is, was they were playing with plastic ball and bat. He threw him a pitch and sent it out of the backyard. And his son got mad, just threw the rest of the balls down. You know what? I will on our Twitter account, which if you don't have that, it's at Sibling Rivalry, but it's at, so SIBLING, and then Rivalries RIVLRY. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I will retweet it on our page, so that way on our timeline, so that way if you haven't seen it, you can catch it. But yeah, that's the question. Or you could be out playing catch with Garrett Cole and his wife. So, they're sheltering in place.
True. Then again, you don't want to get injured while you're just throwing the ball back and forth. That's the other thing.
Right.
We put bubble wrap on our ball players.
Maybe that should be the poll question. Should we bubble wrap the important players?
Right. Mike Trout.
Shohei.
Cody Bellinger.
Right.
I don't want Cody Bellinger on a scooter driving around LA if he's not in bubble wrap.
I don't want him on that at all.
Right.
Even in
I
bubble
think he
wrap.
just goes to IHOP is what I've heard.
Get his takeout. Yeah, but see, now then he's getting a bag of food, and that might throw his balance off.
True.
Just have somebody go get it for you, Cody. So that'll be the big question is, obviously, I'm sure they're probably talking about all that stuff, all the organizations, Major League Baseball, how are we going to, what's our plan to ramp back up into this.
Right.
And then that'll be that question is, what effect will this layoff have on injuries for the players? The other thing that I've heard that might work out is, we were already going to expand the rosters this year by one position. So instead of 25, we have 26. No
Right.
more than 13 pitchers on the roster. Now, the question is, will they expand it to say maybe 30 to give you a couple of extra people because you're trying to get back up to speed, and with the potential of injuries, is it fair to do that, especially with pitchers? And when you think about it, because the rules changing this year, will they maintain those rule changes? The 3 hitter minimum, will it just stay at 26? Things like that.
Well, I was to say all of those are really interesting questions, because when you go back and look, it would be nice for each team to have those extra players, because you just don't know how people are going to come back. And so far, as far as I know, haven't heard any major league players that have the virus. I've heard 2 minor league players. So that's important, because we want to keep them healthy. I would be in favor of an expanded roster if it went into, say, if they started in July, even June, definitely July.
And then the other thing going with that, should they hold off on changing it from the 10-day disabled list to the 15 or injury list? Sorry,
Right.
Injury list to be baseball correct, I guess. Stay at the 10-day versus going to the 15-day, which is what the plan is for this season, simply because of the situation, and then ramp it up next season.
Right. And that's what I would think. I would think that with all these, the new rules, 3 batter minimum, the roster, I still like the DL. I'm not going to call it the IJ. That sounds dumb, but the injured list. The IJ,
right,
that
so
doesn't sound right, Rev. The IL, the IJ, the IL. I don't know where that came from, but yeah, just let the guys play. Let's not worry about throwing in new rules, and see how, and let the season progress. Because really, in the end, that's what the fans want. We want to see, our teams play, our favorite players. We don't want to see the new rules, because at this point, it's already delayed. We don't need to get into that at this point. I know that I'm sure it's spring training. We're already, talking about that. Pitcher comes to mind, Adam Kolarek. He's the one-man guy for the Dodgers. Now he's got to get 3 guys. I know he'll be able to handle it, but I say just, nix it for this season, and 2021 start it.
Well, and you bring up spring training with that. We were on the verge. We were like within a few days or a week of that rule becoming part of the spring training games.
Right.
The 3 minimum, the 3 batter minimum rule was just a couple of days away when everything got shut down. So they, going into the season, they didn't get a chance to start trying it out. That was the point of putting it into spring training.
Right.
So, how, things like that, they need to consider that and restart it next year to get to that point where everybody's had a chance to start figuring out their strategies. I know there was an article in The Athletic where they talked about that, the strategies, how, a lot of people are saying it's going to take stuff away. No, it's going to change how strategy is, because now you got to figure out how you're going to play. And there's probably going to be parts of it we're not all that interested in. We don't like it because of the way that they're going to start using it. That's what's going to happen. They're going to use it in ways that we're not as fans excited about. But
right.
If the goal is to win the game, or to let your pitcher make it through 3 batters. And you're right, with Adam Kolarek, that's, how many times I was reading about somebody else. I didn't see him, but there was somebody that, was like in his career, he's only faced more than 2 batters, like 40 times out of, 200 innings worth or 200 batters worth, only 40 time or innings, I think it was. So a lot of these guys who have been specialists, I mean, this one batter thing, although it's become more common now, has always been around. There's always been that opportunity, with for managers or part of their strategy to do that. And since you're talking about the Dodgers, how do you think this affects them overall? When you look at the team, how does this affect them? Recently in one of the spring training games, I was listening to Charlie Steiner called what the Dodgers. He called it. He goes, "What you have is an embarrassment of riches." And the point is and I look at it too, because when I look at other teams, especially the Angels, when I look at the Dodgers, I don't see any place where there's a lot of room for these young guys to come up. Gavin Lux is lucky because they needed a second baseman, so he's in there. But you look at all these guys farther down the line, it's hard to be rookie in the Dodger system. I don't see, and honestly, I don't see where, as the Dodgers go, how this, other than the time off and having to get back up, they're not waiting for somebody to come back from some major injury. So,
yeah, they don't have any major injuries coming out of the abbreviated spring training. And yeah, I don't see that this delay is going to hurt them. Other than, maybe a little rust, but hopefully when a season does start, they do have that, all the teams have the opportunity to, have that 2-week spring training just to kind of regroup and get back together. Yeah, I don't see how it's gonna, it could help some guys who weren't having a great spring training. One of the guys I was looking at, Will Smith, who came in last year and just exploded and was great defensively and offensively, still good defensively, but in spring training, he only hit 143. So he was that, maybe this opportunity gives him time to work on his hitting, but I don't know.
Well, you figure his hitting fell off in September last year.
Oh yeah.
As well. And my theory, and I think I shared this with you, was that he's played in the minor leagues. The minor leagues are over at the beginning of September because that's when all the call-ups are and stuff like that. He's not used to playing that much deeper into, not on this level.
Yeah.
He may have played fall league, he may have done things like that, but playing at a much higher level, especially on a team like the Dodgers, because you're competing. You're not just playing out the string. You're still in the middle of, and obviously for the Dodgers being in the West, which is still a weaker division, it's looking like they're supposed to win over 100 games this season.
Right.
Or 98 to 105, I think is the windows I've seen. Those things, like with Will Smith, you wonder, was it just he came in at the right time and he picked it up? And like anything, it's like going back to other rookies, looking at Cody Bellinger. At the beginning, he wasn't playing as much. They were platooning so much up until last year that there were times when you saw him that he looked incredible, and there were other times, and he looked like he was on his way to being an MVP, and there were other times that he looked like he was on his way to, like, Tulsa. He wasn't even going to stop in Oklahoma City. He was going to Double-A. And so with Will Smith, I wonder, is this just a spring training thing? Because you see players, go through spring training and not have a great spring and then catch fire opening the season, and vice versa.
Right. That's true. And the other one I would be looking at, I was just trying to look at his stats, was Gavin Lux. Again, you mentioned him. He just is, we need a second baseman, but we do have Kike Hernandez. Chris Taylor can play that spot. And they are guys that you can always depend on. Gavin Lux, I like all the Dodgers, but I wouldn't be opposed if a trade came along for Gavin Lux. He's a good player, but he just doesn't seem to fit for me. but he's on the Dodgers, so we're gonna root for him. But yeah, I don't see any negatives at this point as far as the delay for the Dodgers are concerned. What about the Angels? Because the Angels, they have some injuries. Shohei Ohtani, maybe the delay helps. I don't know.
Well, it does from the standpoint that he's on course to with his, I don't know what they're doing now. Right when everything shut down, they said, hey, he's going to continue on his rehab. But when, now what's happening? What is he doing while he's waiting? He did stay here. He was cleared to go back to Japan, but he decided to stay here. Yeah, that's a good thing. And then and he wasn't going to start until probably mid-May anyway, because they want to limit his innings. Just like, honestly, the person that I thought about when they were talking about limiting innings was Strasburg from the Nationals. When he came back, they limited his innings. In fact, they shut him down, before even the playoffs, and said, no, you're not pitching at all. If we're in the playoffs, you're still not pitching. And look at, and that paid off.
Oh, yeah.
And now I think with and last year Ohtani was okay as a batter. I mean, he was good. He was one of the better. It's definitely going to help him, and it'll help the Angels because now they're going to start the season around the time he was going to come in anyway. That way they can add him in. He only pitches once a week. So that's good. Looking at theirs, because I was looking at, and obviously the comparison once again, the Dodgers, when you look at it, you don't see where's my hole that I have to fill in here. The starting rotation for the Dodgers is, Kershaw, Walker Buehler, David Price, Julio Urias is going to be starting, and then Alex Wood is back. He's got his spot at the end of it. Plus, regardless of how they've pitched, you've got great pitchers coming out of the bullpen. They just need them to step up. But when I look at the Dodgers, we're not seeing the same thing. When you look at the Angels, you don't see the same thing as with the Dodgers. Andrew Heaney, who is the elder statesman of the staff, just by times in tenure with the Angels, got the starting nod. If he can stay healthy, see him. It was like we were talking about Cody Bellinger a second ago. He comes out in one game, he pitches and he's on, and you're like, this is why we got him. You think about it though, he never, he was in Miami. He was with the Dodgers for an afternoon,
right?
And then he went to the Angels, and that was when the Dodgers got Howie Kendrick. And then he's worked his way up. He's had moments. You would think that he would be the ace of the staff by now. And unfortunately, the guy who was turning into the ace of the staff last year was Tyler Skaggs. And we know what happened there. The Angels had last year a lot of injuries.
They did.
And that didn't help. I mean, to both position players and to daily players and to the pitching staff, obviously. Even Mike Trout went down at the end of the season.
Yep.
And had the stuff with his feet. And even with that, he was still the MVP. And that's, I think, when you look at the Angels, you expect them to be better than they are simply because Mike Trout's on that team. And and if you don't pay attention to them, you don't realize that our pitching staff leaves a lot to be desired. And last year it didn't work out because Matt Harvey didn't step up and become, and reclaim his prior glory. Trevor Cahill, who did end up pitching the most innings of any pitcher, but he did most of it out of the bullpen. He really wasn't a starter, much as we needed him to be.
Yeah, I think too that the leadership change for the Angels is going to be huge this season because of Joe Maddon. I mean, I like Dave Roberts most of the time, but if Joe Maddon was the Dodgers manager, I would have I'm not going to say have any worries, but I would feel really good about that, because I like Dave Roberts, but he second guesses himself a lot too. But Joe, to me, comes across as this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to do it. And I think that's what the Angels need, is that leadership role coming from the manager that hopefully trickles down to the everyday players, the pitching staff. It just trickles down through the organization. Because I think that's going to be huge, more so than, the players. Because you hear about, I play it for the coach. I played it for Joe, I guess. Get him excited, get him ramped up.
Yeah, that I agree. Brad Ausmus last year, I don't think he came in being a strong manager. He came in kind of trying to play the game where everybody gets a part and we're all going to do this. And we're going to, the biggest thing that I think he made a mistake with last year was the way he handled the pitching staff. The pitching coach, who was a first-year pitching coach, he was trying some new things. He was doing that. His staff, for the most part, could have been like an analytics staff that you put back in a corner somewhere and let them draw up some stuff and then talk to Joe Madden about it and do that. Those guys weren't ready for that. And the things that they were trying to do, the players weren't ready for because they were making it too hard. And the thing that I think his biggest mistake was the using the opener. We had a couple of pitchers that didn't start games because when they didn't start well. And then they come in the second or third inning and they're facing the bottom of the lineup, or the weaker portions of lineups. And that gave them a little bit of time to warm up and maybe they did better about the top of the lineup or the stronger parts of the lineup. But you end up blowing through a lot of pitchers and you're not teaching these guys how to pitch out of jams, how to pitch. And so I think that Joe's got a little, he's got a different vibe with it. And with that, a couple of the pitchers that we got over the summer, over the winter, were Julio Teheran, Dylan Bundy. Both of these guys are more veteran pitchers, especially Julio Teheran, opening day starter for six times in Atlanta. Here's a guy that as long as he can pitch consistently, eat up the innings, keep the other team from scoring 1,000 runs on them, and just giving up a lot of long balls. Because when you look at it, besides the pitcher's mound and maybe behind the plate at certain times, it's a pretty strong lineup. And
oh yeah,
the Angels are going to be in a position to score like about 1 million runs a game. And now you have it set. Because before you had Mike Trout and Pujols usually in there somewhere behind him or around him, but Pujols, who's he's been consistent the last couple of years. He's still not hitting like he did when he was in St. Louis, but now you've got Shohei, Mike Trout, and Anthony Rendon. Who, now you've got a big Justin Upton, if he can bring it and get back to where he was after last year being, injury issues with his feet, and you put those guys all in there. David Fletcher, who is kind of the big utility guy. He can play just about everywhere. And then eventually maybe Joe Adell comes up from the minors. So there's a lot of, from that standpoint, defensively, we're good in the field. Offensively, we should be incredible. The problem is that the Angels can't score 10 runs in a game and lose 11-10. And that's where the pitching staff comes in.
Right. And I think that's always the issue, especially if you're burning out pitchers, because then going from game to game, you can't use them or you don't want to use them. And then you've got a starter that is a starter, but like you're saying, maybe only starts one inning. So really more relief starter, I guess. Mm-hmm. So pitching is everything. That is true.
And that's the problem. Some teams have a wealth of pitching and some teams have no pitching. That was the problem with the Angels last year is that they had to bring guys up with all the injuries and that stuff they weren't ready to come up.
Yeah, they put you in that spot too, where they look great in the minors. they get up to the majors and they get eaten alive. I've seen that happen lots of times with guys. Like, oh, he was awesome. He was great. And then his first outing was like, what are you thinking? Why did you bring him up? Pitching, I think, is going to be key, definitely for the Angels. It isn't right that the best player in baseball has not been in the postseason. That's just wrong.
Yeah, just one time,
I think
2014.
Yeah, but no further. It should be happening more often. But I'm thinking that the Dodgers and the Angels, as of right now where we sit, I think they're looking pretty good. We'll see.
The Dodgers definitely, it's easy to look from the beginning. Unless there's some kind of a giant breakdown, the Dodgers will win the West.
Yeah.
What happens after that obviously is a whole different program, but they're definitely going to win the West. And, with the lineup that they have and what's coming off the bench, there's really no holes overall in the starting lineup. Now the question will be David Price. How will he fare pitching in the National League, getting a hit finally? But how's he going to be? Is he going to be solid, or is it going to be, well, at least we got Mookie Betts?
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping with David Price, he says his wrist feels good. Maybe being away from Boston and the weather. Of course, with this delay in season, we shouldn't see snow delays happening like in Boston or Colorado that have happened before in April. That he's feeling pretty good. I think he likes the move to LA. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, he had an okay in the spring break. I keep calling it spring break, spring training. And in spring training, not stellar, but was getting there, was getting comfortable. And then everything stopped. So we don't know.
How does this affect him then, do you think?
Well, yeah, he would be, thinking about it, he would be the one that he's older. He has had that injury. What's he doing now? Is he throwing? But that's the other thing. You want him to be, keeping up with their practice, but at the same time, we're like, don't overdo it because we don't want you to get injured. Yeah, that's going to be David, because even like with Alex Wood, he had the back injury, Cincinnati last year, did not have a good year. I think some of that was, I think he probably didn't want to be traded to Cincinnati, and then he injured his back. He's really excited to be back with the Dodgers. I think that is a huge for any ball player when you're back with your friends and where you feel comfortable. And he's, he knows, he's pitched consistently at Dodger Stadium. David Price hasn't. So, and there's the AL to NL thing. Now, I have heard David Price is a pretty good hitter. Maybe that'll be exciting for him because he gets to hit. But that's the one thing, because we didn't get to see him in spring training starting off just awesome in that first showing. He got rocked a little. So yeah, where does he fit in? I think he's still going to be in a starter. I just don't know, will he be that third spot or not? That's the thing, is we talked about earlier, is the pitching rotation. Is the pitching rotation going to be the same? Or will there be guys that come back and maybe sneak in? Ross Stripling, he was one I was surprised not to see in the starting rotation, but I like Ross coming out of the bullpen too. So I'm good either way.
And I was just thinking, as you were mentioning Stripling, that maybe it's good to have a guy like Stripling coming out because he's been a starter, but it used to be there was long relievers. There's not so many long relievers anymore. He could kind of fit in that, especially with this new 3-batter minimum rule. He might be able to come in when somebody's having a bad outing and and do that. So who do you think is going to end up? Obviously, we know, like we mentioned earlier, Kershaw, Bueller, Price, Urias, and Alex Wood. Who else is on the pitching staff?
So you've got Dustin May, who he was injured. He's been injured during spring training. Had some left side soreness. I guess that was getting better, but hadn't thrown any spring training games. Gonsolin always, I think, looks really good. He started and he's come out of the bullpen. I think he would be somebody to look for. Those would be the two. I'm trying to think. Urias, that's the one. Julio, I know. I think to me, he's always kind of been on the bubble. So he would be one I could see possibly not being a starter in the rotation, depending. Stripling might take that spot. I don't know. Because he's had some really good outings in the past. Then he had injuries. Yeah, I think there might be some guys fighting for that fifth starting position that he's holding right now. And that would be where that 2-week spring training would come into play.
So like the 5 that we know so far is that's what Doc has or Dave Roberts has announced. And then, as you mentioned, Dustin May. So if maybe Julio or David Price or even Alex Wood, if any of them, Clayton, if they seem to falter, then you've got Dustin May, you've got Tony Gonsolin that could step up and fill in those gaps. And during the season, there's going to probably be some times where they're going to have to roll some people through. Like I said, it'll be different this year with the 15-day injured list. We'll see how those go. Now, out of the pen, I was just kind of going through and thinking, who's going to be there. You've mentioned Ross Stripling. I believe he'll be in there. Adam Kolarek, you had mentioned he'll definitely be there. But I'm thinking like Pedro Baez, Kinley will definitely be there.
Joe Kelly.
Blake Trinan, who they just picked up.
They just picked him up. And the guy from Minnesota. I don't know how to say his name. I'm looking at it.
Gratterall?
Gratterall. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was looking pretty good in spring training. I mean, he was throwing 100. So 98 to 100. So he would be, I think he's going to be in the pen along with Kinley, Joe Kelly, definitely Kolarek. Jimmy Nelson. Now, is he a starter or relief? He was a relief pitcher. But he's injured.
Right. But this could be something, we were talking earlier about how does this delay help or hurt teams, and that the Dodgers, really where the Dodgers are, the only thing that could probably happen, I mean, helping is that everybody gets some time off, they get to rest, they come back good, but hurting wise, that could definitely happen that somebody loses their timing in the time frame and all that. Jimmy Nelson, Chris Taylor, who's been battling some things, have some time. Maybe this will help them get there. Jimmy Nelson is currently on the 25-man roster.
Right.
Is he somebody? Because as I was looking through, I thought, okay, Pedro Baez, Kenley Jansen, Joe Kelly, Ross Stripling, Blake Trinan, Alexander, what's his name?
Scott
Alexander, Caleb Ferguson, Adam Kolarek. That's what I kind of saw the bullpen being.
Well, and I would probably take Ferguson out of there and maybe Dylan Floro. Caleb Ferguson he struggled last year. I think he was sent down to the minors, brought back up, did okay. But Dylan Floro, he's usually pretty good.
He's the one I actually forgot about.
I would put him in there.
Okay. And then my question marks, coming in were Jimmy Nelson and then Tony Gonsolin. I didn't include Dustin May just simply because I knew he was injured. And also there's not really a spot for him if you want him to be a starter yet.
Right. And I think he is more of a starter than relief. Now, Gonsolin, we've seen both. I think he could do either role. Dustin May, I think, is more I think they're trying to get him into a starting role. So it's possible, yeah, he's not going to have a spot, which might work out okay anyway, because I like him, but his control sometimes is scary.
And then obviously it's easy to look at the starting lineup. At first base, you got Max Muncy primarily, probably Gavin Lux at second, Corey Seager at short, obviously Justin Turner at third.
Yep.
And then the outfield, the question about the outfield is only in left field, and that's Pollock probably, simply because of how much he makes. You're not going to set the big dollar guy on the bench. Whether he should be or not is a different story.
Yeah, and he's this spring, in just what we've seen this spring, he picked up where he left off in the playoffs and before that too. Jock Peterson, you got Chris Taylor that could pick up left field. Jock Peterson, I get a different vibe from ever since. I know it was a weird situation for him. He was going to be traded to the Angels, then that got called off. He's still a Dodger. I'm wondering, does he still want to be a Dodger? Does he want to go somewhere else? Just vibes that when I read stuff or look at social media, he dyed his hair blonde or something. I mean, they just seem like, it seems to me that maybe he didn't want to be traded to the Angels, but he was, okay, I'm going to be traded, and then he wasn't, and then he had the arbitration.
I think that's the bigger issue.
Hurt feelings.
Yeah, I think the arbitration's where the hurt feelings are. I think he's fine. Hey, it didn't work out. You're still going to be a Dodger, but then, the arbitration happened while he was in that limbo.
Right.
And I don't blame him for being upset about that.
Yeah, that shouldn't have happened. They should have postponed
the whole thing
until they knew.
With the Angels, I was happy to see him come because we had a spot for him in right field. As much as I love Brian Goodwin, who will be covering right field to start out, at least at the beginning of the season, Jock was a better acquisition. The other part of that deal was Ross Stripling, and Ross Stripling, while he wasn't going to be an ace, he was still going to be a solid pitcher, and he was going to help
Angels
stabilize. And that's where, looking at the starting pitching with the Angels, that he would have been a good guy to slide into that spot. Just looking before I mention more about that the Angels rotation, the Dodgers. So we've got Bellinger, Betts in center and right,
which is crazy. That's just crazy to me, and that's why I'm so excited about this season, because all stars, Gold Glovers, Silver Sluggers, MVPs,
2 MVPs,
right there.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible to see how that works out. Will Smith's probably going to be the starter behind the plate, and then your reserves with Austin Barnes, Jock Peterson, Chris Taylor, and then Kike Hernandez. Those guys will be on your bench, which once again, you never know, any of those guys can fill in more than adequately. And most of these guys, the bench, all those guys would be starters somewhere else. Just as we were talking about Jock coming to the Angels, he would have been the everyday right fielder.
Right. Well, and talking about Austin Barnes, I'm partial to Austin. He's, I don't know, we call him cousin, but maybe, who knows. But spring training, he had 333 batting average and a 1.033 OPS. He was on fire. And then you look at Will Smith, 143 batting average, 518 OPS. Austin Barnes is a good defensive catcher too. I think that coming out, if they had come out of spring training and we were starting today with a game against the Giants, there would be a good possibility that maybe Austin would be the starting catcher. But there would be platooning going on there, obviously, because catching's a tough spot, and playing every single game is tough. I think that'd be interesting, because then again, is it going to come back to the same? Is Will Smith going to, batting wise, is he going to be the same? And is Austin Barnes going to be keeping it up? Also, the other thing about Austin Barnes is he's out of options. So, I mean, he has he's got a 1-year contract, but he doesn't make the roster, which we know he's going to make the roster because they got to have another catcher. But I think that helps fuel the fire for him to say, hey, look at me, I'm here. And he's been a good catcher. It's just, offensively was really rough for him last year. I'd like to see Russell Martin come back too, but he's still a free agent. Even if Russell Martin came back not as a catcher, but in the bullpen.
Yeah, he was the best reliever last year for the Dodgers.
Yep, he's a good presence in the clubhouse. So I'd like to see him. Even you just put him in the bullpen.
Who do you take out of this mix? Do you send Lux back to Oklahoma City, and Martin takes his roster spot?
Yeah, see, that's a tough one because we didn't mention we got Matt Beatty too, and Matt Beatty,
right,
first baseman, but I think he could possibly slide. I'd have to look and see. He possibly could slide into that second base position, but I think he's more of a first baseman. Yeah, so. Where do we?
But you could put him at first and then move Max.
Well, Max could be second. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's the thing is with Lux, does he need more time in the minors? I don't. Possibly. Corey Seager's looking really good. Was looking really good at spring training. Yeah, it's just a really deep lineup, and the one thing with these guys is they know, and maybe Gavin Lux doesn't quite understand this yet, is on the Dodgers, you're going to play to win, but you're not always going to play every day. Unfortunately, maybe AJ Pollock doesn't understand that either, but he needs to, because we've got this depth, even coming off the bench. So it's a hard one to take somebody off, put somebody in, it's going to be good. The job's still going to get done, but, Chris Taylor's made some awesome plays. He's been clutch. Kike Hernandez, you think back to when they were playing the Cubs in the postseason and he hit 4 or 5 home runs. He just has that. The guys that come up off the bench have that ability to put the spark back into the game. And I kind of like that they have to. Part of it is I would like to see a consistent infield, because I think that makes a difference. For a couple of years, we didn't have that consistency in the infield. And I think it showed, of course, with Corey Seager out. And then we had Manny Machado, and that was a huge bust. He's in San Diego, so that's fine. But yeah, who do you take off? Who do you leave off on the Dodgers? That's a hard question, because you want to keep them all, but you can't.
Right. That's what I'm saying. With the Dodgers, there's not really too many holes there that you have to fill. And there's a wealth of talent coming up. And if you're one of these guys that, are kind of sitting there like Pollock, who continues to not really, be the guy that they traded or that they signed, then you got to watch out that there's somebody down below that, and you go out, you get injured or you're in a slump and they bring somebody in. Even, Chris Taylor or Kike or Jock can go in there and take his job. The thing is that there might be somebody else down there who's a lot even hungrier than those guys, because they've solidified a spot in the roster just by their flexibility, their versatility. That's the one thing with the Dodger system. There's just so much depth to it, so many great players that a lot of these kids have got to be wondering, when am I ever going to get my shot at playing in the bigs? It's like, well, don't know when it's going to happen with the Dodgers, because you got so many guys. When you think about it, Justin Turner's like the oldest guy out there. He's in his mid-30s.
Right.
And he's like the senior citizen of the Dodgers crew. So many guys who are younger. I guess David Price, Clayton Kershaw, but of the day-to-days, he's the anchor of the field out there, the infield and all that. And it's just it'll be interesting to see how they play out with all that and how that depth works for them. if it does like it has in the past, then once again they should be in a position to go to the World Series again. But we thought that last year too.
Right. Yeah. Last year that was a bust. I don't know. It wasn't their year
No,
to go.
that was probably a good thing though. They needed
Yeah.
to kind of get kind of shake their cage a little.
Yeah. They didn't need to go back and then, play, if it had been the Astros, play them again, especially with everything we know. But yeah, I was okay. I mean, I wanted them obviously to go, but going into postseason last year, you're hopeful. Yeah, they're going to go, they're going to make it. But it was just the Nationals' time. It was their turn and they did it right. And I was happy to see them win. But looking at the Angels lineup, we didn't even mention Simba.
No, we haven't.
Stop.
We didn't mention a lot about we talked about Trout, Pujols. We talked more about pitching, obviously. And I was thinking that another guy who will probably benefit from this extra time off is Griffin Canning, who was a rookie, last year. He's coming up, showed a lot of promise, looked good, and then he had some elbow issues. He's not had Tommy John surgery yet, which is a prerequisite for Angel pitchers. But he got I guess they just called it a biological injection into his elbow. So, they're waiting and towards the end of this month, they were going to be looking to see. He wasn't going to be on the opening day roster per se, just because he wasn't going to be ready. But now, depending on how it's healing up and how he starts throwing again, he, like Shohei Ohtani, may be able to come in and actually have start at the beginning of the season based on when the season begins. So that'll be a good thing. We need some youth as well. If he can be in there, stay healthy, then that might be good for the pitching staff. Obviously, we'll see. We're looking at, like I said, Haney's going to be the opening day starter, followed by Julio Teheran, Dylan Bundy. Not sure what's going to happen if Griffin Canning isn't ready to come back. Who will take that spot? We have a few guys who pitched were starters last year. Dylan Peters, Felix Pena, and a couple other guys that could come in. Matt Andriese, who we picked up in the offseason, he'll probably end up in the bullpen. We have our closer, Blanco Caballo, Hansel Robles, who came out of nowhere. He just decided he was ready for it to be his time, and he became the closer. So we have that. Jaime Barria is another guy who he pitched pretty well overall last year, filling in spots. As you can see, unlike when we talk about the Dodgers starting rotation and who could step in and cover for them, it's easy. The fight is who's going to cover for these guys, because we have so many decent replacements.
Right.
With the Angels, you got guys who have potential, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get anywhere.
I was looking at catcher. Seems to be a position that the Angels kind of struggle with too.
Which is funny, because for all those years, that wasn't the key. Of course, we were led by a catcher in Mike Scioscia.
Right.
But Castro, who came to us, we signed him, and he was in Minnesota, is now, he's going to be the starter. He's a little older. He's definitely a veteran, and he's got that veteran presence behind the plate. Is going to be good, and he hits pretty decently. He's a middle of the road, decent player. He's a good guy to bridge the gap till we get either a rookie that's coming up that's on fire, or we can move into a new phase and get a different player. A better catcher to come in. And then the backup is what's his name, Max Stassi, who's a good defensive catcher, but he can't hit.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things. That's the bad part, is our battery is not something that we're can guarantee is going to be there. I believe that Castro, I think he'll be solid enough, and that's kind of what we need. We just need guys in the lineup that are able to be there and just be consistent every day. Step up and get that base hit when they need one. They don't have to carry the offense. We have Mike Trout. We have Anthony Rendon, Andrelton Simmons, who's coming off of, a couple of years ago, he had a great offensive year, and then he got injured, and it took him a while to come back. He didn't really. I think he was doing well in spring as far as building back up, and I think he was on his way, just like Justin Upton. So we have plenty of guys there who can, David Fletcher, who was, one of our best hitters last year. We have guys that can do that. We don't need Jason Castro to necessarily carry the load. We just need him to be a solid everyday catcher and contribute when he can.
Yeah, and last year he had a 232 batting average. It's a decent for catcher. 13 home runs, 30 RBI. So yeah, I mean, he just needs to come in, play small ball, get those hits, get the walk if he needs it, drive in some runs here or there. Because you're right, Trout, Simba, Rendon, Otani, Pujols, if he's consistent. Yeah, I mean, I would think for you too, as an Angels fan, that you would be excited about this baseball season, like I am with the Dodgers, and then to have this delay because you want to see the direction that they're going to go in. And so now we're just in the clubhouse playing cards. Not even that. We can't even be in the clubhouse.
Can't even know.
We're at home.
We're playing cards. We're playing cards over Skype.
Virtually. That's right. Playing Uno, whatever. Because, looking around the league, and I think, the Dodgers, the Angels aren't the only ones. I mean, you've got a lot of changes. The White Sox, Chicago White Sox made some moves. I think the Yankees too are, they're looking at another good year. Of course, they're probably the ones that are gonna benefit the most. Maybe not the most, but they're gonna benefit from the delay because they have Aaron Judge out. There's a lot of guys out. Would not have been ready
you look
on
at
opening day.
You look at that list of the Yankees. You're right. There's a lot of guys who are out. They weren't going to be around on opening day, and now you're looking at the possibility that Aaron Judge will come back. He's got that cracked rib or whatever was going on, so he's got those issues. And then Giancarlo Stanton. Think about this. Last year, they made it through, in through the playoffs and everything with Giancarlo Stanton not playing. And he was just a luxury item, compared to what they did. They made it there. Looking at some of these guys, three Yankees, Judge, Stanton, and then Paxton, the pitcher, are all, kind of scheduled to be back around May 15th, which would put it right around opening day. And if it pushes even farther, they're going to get Aaron Hicks back.
Right, I was just looking at that too. So
center field, and the thing that helps them, the biggest thing this year that helps them, is that like Luis Severino is out for the season.
Yeah.
And last year that would have been an issue. Now this year you don't even care because you got Garrett Cole.
Exactly.
So
that would be the other thing. Is, like I said, being excited about, our teams, Dodgers, Angels, but also, Garrett Cole, how's he going to pitch? What's the difference, all of that. Because, last season, the hot stove was not even on. I think it was broken. And then this season, it took a little bit longer, but I think they were more meaningful transactions, I guess, that were happening. So that's why I was, I'm really looking forward to this season, not just for the Dodgers, but to look and see what other teams, how they're going to shape up.
Yeah,
and how many times the Astros will get hit. That's the other thing I'm looking forward to. Talking about hot stove and free agents, I was looking at, at who's still around. And of course, we have Yasiel Puig, was a Dodger, went to Cincinnati, is still out there, but I have heard rumors that the Giants, San Francisco Giants, are looking to sign him, which would be really weird for him to be wearing Giant orange and black. It'll just, I don't know if that, I've heard that. I haven't heard anything definitive about that. The other one that really surprised me is Scooter Gennett. He's still a free agent, and he was with Cincinnati, got traded to the Giants, and kind of fell off the face of the earth, like pretty much. I mean, he hasn't shown great numbers. His best year was in 2018, but I could see him as somebody, maybe he gets back up to starting strength, but he could be on the bench guy, possibly. But I was surprised to see his name still out there, that he has, nobody's picked him up yet.
Well, I wonder too, though, is some of these guys may not see anything until we get closer to start playing. If they can add some players to the roster, maybe they'll get signed then. They'll see, hey, I'm waiting to see if one of my outfielders gets injured. I'll bring in Puig.
That could be
obviously,
a possibility.
Obviously with Puig has, for as fun as he can be, as good of a player as he can be, he carries a lot of baggage around with him. That sometimes is a problem. And, in a situation like this, I wonder if, in the minds of a lot of the GMs, if they're just not ready to take him on with everything else that's going on.
Well, and him being linked to San Francisco makes sense because Farhan's there, so he knows him. He knows Puig because he was with the Dodgers, so he could be like, yeah, I know how to handle him. He does have a lot of baggage. He does some weird stuff on the field, licks his bats. But I've seen a couple other guys do that too.
Yeah, Mark Fridrich back in the 70s, the bird, he talked to the ball. So
so it'd be interesting to see, as once hopefully we get, the date of opening day when baseball comes back, that maybe he will be, if they did open up roster spots, somebody like Puig, I think would be signed, maybe even Scooter. Some of these other guys, Addison Russell, he's still a free agent. I don't know. He just got the baggage too with domestic abuse. Right. Fernando Rodney, Ben Zobrist, but, and he's almost 40. Cabrera, Mark Reynolds, who's from Colorado, and then Tony Sangrani. He didn't pitch at all in 2019, and I don't think a team's going to take a chance on him at this point. So he might be done.
We will see, how that shapes up as things go. Yeah, I was thinking about the other teams in the league. How does this, like we talked about the Dodgers and the Angels, obviously, the teams or the players that are close to coming back, their injuries, they're almost done with their rehab and things like that, or they're working through it. Those players will benefit from this extra time. Thus, the players that they're on will benefit. So, and you look around at different teams, I was thinking, because we've talked a lot about with the Dodgers with Mookie Betts. Well, part of that trade was Alex Verdugo, who still got no timetable for return because of his back.
Seen May 15th, but I think that's kind of just the common date that they're putting in there. He's another one, as far as the trade, totally understood, somebody's got to go, but he's a spark plug. But he does have that back. He does still have the back injury because he was out from was it about September, maybe even August last year, and he still isn't. So Dodgers probably got at the better end of that deal. I still like him. I think he'd really good for the Red Sox, but he's got to get healthy. So this could be helpful for him.
Definitely. And the Sox are going to need help because they lost Chris Sale.
Yep.
He's going to have Tommy
Tommy
John
John.
surgery. Speaking of someone else that was talked about a lot during the offseason, was part of trade rumors, especially connected to Francisco Lindor, was Mike Clevenger from
Oh,
the
right.
Indians. And he's out for a while, surgery on his left knee. So the Indians are going to be without, one of their better. Kluber went to Texas. Now they're having that, and you're probably, if you were in on them, trying to get Clevenger and Lindor, maybe one or the other or both in a trade. You probably sigh of relief that you didn't sign him based off of what happened there. Rich Hill.
Yeah, Rich Hill. I was going to say Clevenger. That when I saw that he was injured, yeah, I think I was okay. We didn't need him.
So yeah, Rich Hill, who ended up in the Twins was a free agent. And then of course, as far as injuries go, he's pushed till like June, I think, right now, if not later. But that's all right. They got Kinta Maeda there in Minnesota, so that
he's gonna be happy there.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll. I think they're gonna. I think the Twins were already a strong team, and they kept Odorizzi, who was one of the top pitchers that the Angels were targeting. So they kept him at least for another year. Some of these injuries and some of these guys, like I said, are going to come back. The pitchers will be the ones that will benefit the most from this, because with this extra time, depending on what kind of conditioning they're doing. What's his name? Verlander is out.
Oh, right. I didn't even know that he had surgery.
And then the rookie of the year, Alvarez, he's out with an injury as well. So Houston, while they're going to have problems with other things, this is going to be something that definitely, not having some of these players right away could also cause them problems. Looking through some of the injured list, and I noticed number one, Tampa has no reported injuries right now.
Yeah.
And then the other one that caught my eye were a couple of the Western AL West rivals. Texas, they have two or three pieces, but the one that stood out was former Dodger prospect Willie Calhoun. And he's out with that jaw injury from getting hit by Julio Urias.
Yeah. And that was a scary thing. So hopefully he's healing up really well, because I know that was scary, obviously, for him and for Julio and just everybody.
Willie Calhoun. And then I just thought about this. Yonder Alvarez from Houston.
Yeah.
He's in the Dodger system as well.
Yeah, he was.
Well, just for a second.
We got Josh Fields. Woohoo!
Yeah, that was a great trade. Rookie of the year. But then you wonder, too, where would he have ended up at last year? I mean, I guess he could have played in Pollock's spot, been in left field.
He could have, yeah, or he'd be in Oklahoma City. I mean, Josh Fields wasn't, he had his moments. But yeah.
Is he still a Dodger?
No, he is not. I don't know where he is. Does he even play ball? That'll be our next episode. Where is Josh Fields?
Where is Josh Fields?
This will become a true crime. Agent. Oh.
He's a free agent. Right now he's right. Well, he says he's a free agent. They put him down as that he's with the Nashville Sounds, pitching in at AAA, I guess.
Sounds who are the Sounds? Oakland A's? Is that right? I know they used to be at some point.
I don't remember who the Nashville Sounds. They used to be Cincinnati, then they became something else, and they are the AAA affiliate of the Texas Rangers.
Oh, wow! I wouldn't have expected that. Huh? Yeah, I've been to a few of their games back in the day.
Hot dogs.
Yep. Wonder if that guy's still there. The hot dog vendor.
They're opening that new stadium. Maybe we should go and see if he's there.
We should. And take the podcast on the road. The other thing that's going to benefit, I mean, I know this happened a while ago, but the stadium caught on fire for the Rangers.
It did.
So they're going to have extra time. So this could help them out too.
Dodger Stadium's renovations.
Yep.
Every time I saw something about it, when everything was still on target to open next week, everybody's like, "Are you sure it's going to be done? Are you sure it's going to be ready?" I didn't hear anybody say, other than the team go, "Yeah, it's on course."
Yeah, it didn't look like it from pictures, but I mean, I think they would have had to do a hurry up job on some of it. But so some stadiums will benefit from the delay too. Well, I'm hoping with our next episode, this episode 1, real excited about it. Episode 2, maybe we'll have some more information on the day where we can still talk about it. Of course, that's what we all do here at Sibling Rivalry, baseball 24/7.
All right, that'll wrap up this edition of Sibling Rivalry. Tune in next week when we can talk about baseball movies.
Sounds good to me. Baseball all the time.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to our very first podcast. We look forward to spending some more time with you next week. I am the big brother, Jeff.
I'm the little sister, Jana, and this has been Sibling Rivalry.